everyone, and welcome to DREAMLEAPERS. I'm your host, Harriette Cole, and I have a very special guest with me today, someone I met a couple of months ago in my happy place in Sag Harbor, New York. He is an incredible writer, author. Let me tell you about him. He's actually a legendary writer whose words have told more than just stories, they have revealed lives. For decades, Tom Junod has been one of the most distinctive voices in American journalism. Currently, he is serving as a senior writer for ESPN, and he is also known for his major contributions at GQ and Esquire, and for writing with a rare emotional honesty that blurs the line between reporter, witness, observer, and participant. From his unforgettable profile of the beloved Fred Rogers, a piece that would go on to inspire the film that you may have seen, A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, to his controversial profile of Kevin Spacey, Tom has spent a lifetime exploring what it means to be human, and more specifically, what it means to be a man. So, what happens when a writer who has spent his career examining others turns the lens inward? Well, in his deeply personal and long-awaited 2026 memoir, In the Days of My Youth, I Was Told What It Means to Be a Man, Tom takes us on a profound journey into his own life, into the shadow of his father, into questions of masculinity, identity, love, and inheritance. This memoir is an exposition of the emotional truths that have quietly shaped his work all along the way. And in many ways, this book may be the missing key to understanding his entire body of work. That's what a lot of critics have said who've read his book already. So as we celebrate Father's Day weekend, I just thought it would be perfect to have this conversation with Tom Junod. So let's welcome him now.
Harriette.
Hey, well,
how you doing?
Doing great. And I see you're in New York City like me today.
I sure am.
But where do you live, Tom?
So I lived part of the year in Atlanta, Georgia, and then part of the year out on Long Island, where I'm from.
Beautiful. So in honor of Father's Day, I thought this was a perfect time for us to talk about this particular book, but also to look at your career. And I have to say, I was thrilled when I met you we participated in something called the Creativity Conference that was at a place called the Church in Sag Harbor, this incredible gathering of the most different from each other participants, right? I mean,
that was a really interesting day, and you never knew what was going to happen next or come next.
We had no idea. There was a scientist, there was a poet, there was just all kinds of people. But I think that I stayed interested the whole time because everyone was so different from each other.
Yeah. Same here. Yeah. It was a great day.
It was a great day. And when you came on and started talking about your book, the framework was talking about secrets.
That's right.
And I was really compelled by that and have sat with it a lot because everybody has secrets. Sure. Your book certainly talks about the secrets of your family. But I'd like for you to first just tell me what does that mean to you? What is a secret in Tom Junod's world?
Well, so the book is about my dad. But it's also about the secrets, and it's that's out of necessity because my dad had so many. And so I grew up, my brother grew up, my sister grew up, my mother grew up, sort of being aware of his secrets and sort of being aware of the hidden language of secrets, which is that you don't tell them. You don't talk about what's happening sort of obviously, right? It's taking place right in front of you. And that was always a difficulty for me. When I was 3 years old, my dad was openly having an affair with the mother of one of my best friends. I mean, when you look back now at like the home movies that were taken at the time, they're just extraordinary in that, I mean, him and my father and his, I guess his girlfriend, his lover, I don't know exactly what word to use there. There's no language for it when you're 3
Right.
years old, I'll
Because
tell you what. Yeah,
also because you're not supposed to say it. So even if
you're
you
not
weren't
supposed to
free, there
say
was
it.
no language, right?
Yeah, right. So, but it was all taking place very, very openly. And I was really young, but I was really aware of it. And I was really aware of the fact that it was, never to be mentioned. And these are, and that is the thing that fascinates me about secrets. There was a time, God, when I was first starting the book, and I talked to a friend of mine, a colleague of mine, about what I was doing and about some of the secrets in it. And he said to me, you know, and I'll bet that no one ever had to tell you not to talk about them.
Mhm.
And that's exactly right. That is still, I mean, to this day, the most accurate, simple, and profound statement on the power of secrets that I've heard. And I've read books on secrets, but
Mhm.
I haven't heard anything more clarifying than that, because it's true. No one has, I mean, no one ever said don't,
Don't
there was
There's so
I
many
like,
things they don't have to tell you, don't say.
right. Like, so when I was like 20 years old, I went out on a date with my dad. He he asked me to come into New York City. I went into New York City, and we went out on what was a date with a woman who was in my mind, very clearly his girlfriend. And did he have to tell me when we came home not to mention it to my mom? He did not.
So this is a story that many people hold as a secret. There
Sure,
are so many
sure.
families where often the father, but not always, but very often the father is uh, having relationships outside of his marriage.
Right.
And so I'm sure that as people read the book, there's some sense of familiarity for people who went through this. One of the things that I see through your writing is the pain, the
Mhm.
pain that you, as this son who loved your father so dearly, had, in large part because of the pain that it caused your mother.
Yes.
And so there's this tension, because on the one hand, we all, most of us anyhow, hold our parents in the highest of esteem, our fathers in particular. They're like gods in a way. And there's this sense of perfection that we want to look at them through that lens. And yet all people are flawed, but in this case, this type of behavior is so devastating to the family. And so you talk about it. You talk about how it impacted your mother. I'd like for you to talk about that, but also the angst that you felt, this
Yeah.
tremendous love, and also,
Yeah. Well, so the thing that you need to know about my dad is that, so nobody told me, nobody had to tell me not to talk about his secrets, but he told me himself that he was like the world's primary example of manhood. I mean, it wasn't like that was the unstated thing in the household.
he had
My
an ego.
Yeah, this huge ego, and he would tell me while he was instructing me in what he regarded as the necessary precepts of manhood. I mean, literally in the morning, he would stand in front of the mirror and say, like, in his black bikinis,
Right, you described it.
and he
What
would.
we now think of as the Speedos, right?
They were even smaller than Speedos. They made Speedos look like boxer shorts.
Oh my God.
So he would stand there, and he was he was very dark. He was a sort of a professional tanner before George Hamilton ever came around. And he would say,
And he had, by the way, he had a better color than George Hamilton.
he did. He got darker than George Hamilton. That's like a great way to describe him. But he would say, stand there and go, look at this body. Have you ever seen a body like this? And so so it wasn't.
What did you do when he said this? What did you do?
I would look at his body and admire it as I was instructed to. It was a crazy way to grow up. So there was always him talking about his manhood, his masculinity. So so last night, I'm in New York, and last night I stayed at the Ace Hotel. And of course, that reminded me that my father's nickname was Ace. Ah. And of course, the kind of combs he had in his bathroom were Ace combs.
Right.
And so I actually thought that they were sort of named after him when I was a little kid. That's how all in I was with the Ace.
And you're the youngest child.
Yeah.
So you were the one who could idolize him, even as your twin brother and sister had moved on to do whatever, think about whatever they were thinking about. Yeah. You were a captive audience.
I was a captive audience, especially because my brother and my sister were both 10 years older than I am. And so, in terms of squaring my father's inflated self-regard, the lessons that he taught me about manhood and the secrets, squaring all three of those things was a really difficult thing. And I think that, we talk about my mom's pain. I think that it's impossible to square those three things, right? You can't have a person saying that they are an example of not just what you should admire, but what everybody should admire. And the secrets, where is that fulcrum? Where is that place where those sort of things sort of can be mentioned in the same breath? And the answer is they can't. But somebody's going to pay the price for it. And the person who paid the price for that was definitely my mom, and and to a lesser degree me.
Well, you tell a story. There's, first of all, guys, there's so many incredible stories in this book, and Tom, you are quite a skillful writer, so you take us all the way in to these experiences. But so you tell a story of when your father's older. I think it's in his later years, and you two are out, and an 80-year-old woman comes and makes a play. Tell that story.
I finally had gotten the chance to interview my dad, and this was for a story I did for GQ that came to be called My Father's Fashion Tips, because that was the whole idea of the story. Was I was going to sort of try, I couldn't, once again, I couldn't tell the secrets, but I could tell his secrets of hygiene, of dressing, and all of the things that he taught me. So we went out to the Dune Deck Hotel in West Hampton Beach, Long Island, and we went out to the restaurant because when I was growing up, we had a house in West Hampton, and my father used to go to the Dune Deck. Did I know that he was going to the Dune Deck to meet Zsa Zsa Gabor, which is absolutely true? I did not, but I still had a suspicion because of just who my dad was and the way that he carried himself through the world. So we went out to the Dune Deck, and my dad was 77, but he was a striking 77. He really was. And then one night, a woman, we're going out to dinner, and a woman comes up on a walker and asks him for his number.
I love that.
It was just, it was an amazing moment. And then, the next day, I asked him, I said, well, Dad, when you were my age, because I was in my 30s at the time, I said, Dad, when you were my age, did you, is that what it was like?
Right.
Did women come and ask you for their number? And his answer was, well, they weren't 81, because this woman was 81 years old. They were younger than that. I was like, yes, Dad, I know that they were younger than that, but did it happen? And then he gave me this sort of amazing response, which was that there was a time in his life when he couldn't walk down Fifth Avenue without being propositioned. And, I walked down Fifth Avenue today, and
were you propositioned?
I was not propositioned, but I definitely thought of my dad. And that's, when you grow up with an outsized character as a father, that stays with you, well into your life. In fact, your whole life.
Yeah. Hey guys, this is Dream Leapers with Harriette Cole. We are talking with Tom Junod, and his book is In the Days of My Youth, I Was Told What It Means to Be a Man. Okay, so Tom, this title comes from a famous song. Tell us, anybody who doesn't know, can you tell us what it comes from and why you chose it?
Okay, so do you want me to say it or do you want me to sing it?
Oh, please do sing it.
All right, okay. In the days of my youth, I was told what it means to be a man. And that is the first line of the first song of the first Led Zeppelin album. Wow. It's the first line of a song called Good Times, Bad Times. And it was not the original title of the book. When I brought the book to Doubleday, at first, the title was My Father's Women. Ooh. And then, which is a pretty good title. Mm-hmm. And then I started sort of, as I was working on the book, I came up with all sorts of poetic titles, and as my editor called them, precious titles. And so he did not want there to be a precious title. Mm-hmm. And so I went one morning to a restaurant in New York to meet him from breakfast. And we sat down, and without saying a word, he reached into the interior pocket of his suit jacket, produced a sealed white envelope, and with an air of great ceremony, handed it to me. I looked at it, I opened it, and it said, there was a sheet of paper inside that said, in the days of my youth, I was told what it means to be a man. And I looked at him and he said, that's your title.
Wow.
And it was.
Great. It definitely does get you to talking.
Yes, and singing occasionally.
For talking and singing, and then for all those who know Led Zeppelin, they're like, oh, you took me back. And if you don't know, it still is it's a clever title.
Well, because the title is literal. I mean, in the days of my youth, I really was told what it means to be a man.
And so the conflict of that, though, is pretty amazing. Like, on the one hand, your father, and you talk about how he revered like the Rat Pack and like just his time in life. These guys were smooth, perfectly dressed. You talk so much about the fashion, the custom shirt and the cufflinks, and the savoir faire that these men had, and the cigarette, the whole thing. It was a whole thing. And your father was swept up. Like it's like he created another world for himself.
He did.
In this world that was his world.
Yes.
And for many people, when that happened, like, the marriage didn't last, but your parents never broke up. Why do you think that is so?
I've wondered about that a lot. I think for a few reasons. I think that number one, my mom was afraid. I mean, she was, I think that one of the things that I really try to capture in the book is her predicament, and by extension, the predicament of so many of the women I grew up with, and so many of the women in the book. I mean, they are from my mom to my Aunt Ellie, to my Aunt Seal, to Valerie Shockett, my father's
The first lover you
the
knew about.
first lover that I knew about.
Right.
Peggy Monahan, who was the love of his life. All these women were just like, they were powerful figures in their own right. They were beautiful. Like my mother was a beautiful woman. They were glamorous. They looked like movie stars as much as my dad looked like a member of the Rat Pack.
Right.
And yet they did not have anything like the power that my dad had. And I think that goes, I mean, I think it applies to almost every single woman of that generation that I write about in the book. And so, my mom didn't have a lot of power. My mom didn't have much of an education. I'm not sure if my mom graduated from high school or not.
Did she ever work?
She never worked.
Yeah. So she was that generation.
Yeah, she never worked. I mean, she worked taking care of us. I mean,
Sure. And let's be clear, that is
Yeah.
a job. But in terms
Totally.
of, she was part of the generation where, and I'm going to say this is very much white women.
Yes, very much so.
It was, you weren't, she was Leave It to Beaver. It was that. It was like you weren't supposed to work. If you were of upper middle class, you weren't supposed to work. You were supposed to work in the home, take care of the family. Often you also had help in the house taking care of the home.
Sure. We had, when I was a little kid, we had help.
Of course. I mean, that's what that was. That's what that world was. And many women, even if their husbands were not having extramarital relationships, many women still had the feeling of being trapped because they didn't have any money. I mean, actually, back then in the early days, for your parents, it may have even been your women at a certain point weren't even allowed to have a bank account with their name on it. They weren't allowed to buy property. There were all kinds of rules that I think I just wanted to make sure for folks who are listening who don't know about that era, it was such a different time from now. The ability to be independent for a woman was very, very different than it is today.
I don't think that my mother really had an example of someone who had done that and could show her that she could do it.
Right.
I mean, I went to Catholic school, grammar school and high school. My dad was not a religious person at all, but my mom was a fervent Catholic. And I didn't know a single person in my hometown who was divorced.
Right.
I would hear from, my dad about women in like the fashion business and the handbag business, because my father was a handbag salesman. I would hear about women who were divorced, but they became almost like a different category of person. They were a divorcee.
Right.
They weren't even, it wasn't even like
there was shame attached to that.
There was a tremendous shame and danger attached to that. Like, if a divorcee came over to your house, it was like you knew it beforehand. It was a whole different world. And I don't think that my mom was ready for that. But I also think that there was something else that happened. I think that two things. Number one, my dad was away a lot. I mean, he would be gone 5 and 6 weeks at a time on these road trips for his work.
Wow.
And for his tan. my dad would go away on these trips 5 or 6 weeks, and I'd hear from my mom how hard he was working. Oh, your dad works so hard. And then he'd come home and we'd pick him up at JFK, and he would be so tan and so dark, and he would look so great and so refreshed and renewed that you couldn't, women and men couldn't take their eyes off him when he walked through the airport. And I'd be like, what happened to all the hard work? He looked like he just came from a spa. But the thing, I think that with my mom, that was sort of like the deal that she made. She lived with him when he was around. And then when he was gone, she could kind of do as she pleased. And I could kind of do as I pleased. It was a whole different world when my dad was away.
You described too how even with all that happened, well, you say that they weren't in love with each other, but it's clear from your storytelling that they loved each other, or at least that he loved her. And there's an example that you tell in the story where you don't necessarily say those words, but when your mother was going to have bypass surgery.
Mm-hmm.
And you describe how terrified your father was that she might not live. And what I got from reading that scene was just, he needed her. He really did need her. So there's so much conflicted emotion around that. What do you talk about that moment, please?
Well, so my mom had bypass surgery when she was 83 years old. And I went down to Florida to be there. And it was when I got there that I came to understand that my mom did not think that she was going to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And how did I know that? Because I was sitting out on the balcony of their condominium in Florida, and I was by myself, just sort of taking in the smell of the ocean and that whole thing. And she came out, opened, and then closed behind her the sliding glass door. And she looks at me and she says, "I know you idolize him." And I said, "No, Ma, I don't idolize him." And she goes, "I know it. And it's okay because he's your father. But there's something I need to tell you. He's a mean, nasty, little man and no one for you to idolize." So she thought she was going to die, and she was trying to tell me what she thought I should know, because I had made a choice when I was growing up, and I think I had made it for my own survival, and I made it in high school, which was that I was going to love my mom to the max, but I was going to try to be my dad's son. And so I think that she was aware of that, and she didn't like it. She didn't like she didn't like the possibility that I might turn out to be like him.
Well, that's a fair thing to worry about.
It's a fair thing to worry about. And so she told me what she felt she needed to say. I mean, that was almost the entirety of the conversation.
And you remember it.
I'll never forget it, because the words were so well chosen, especially when she said that he was a little man. Okay, so, I mean, my dad wasn't just Lou Junod. He was Big Lou. That's what everybody called him, Big Lou. And she was saying that he was little. So she was contesting his estimation of himself, but also my estimation of him. But then the next day, I was there with my mom as my mom was being wheeled away into the operating room, because my father could not handle it. And it was the thing about my dad. There was an overpowering strength of his aura, but in truth, he wasn't as strong as he made himself out to be. And you could see that in times of crisis, and especially with times of crisis about my mom. So, like when she said, is he a little man? Is his lack of strength and fortitude while she's being away, does that mean that she's right, or does that mean that she's wrong? I mean, because is she right in that he's weak, or is she wrong in that he did love her?
Well, it comes across very clearly that he loved her, whatever that meant.
whatever that meant.
Very complicated. Hey guys, this is Dream Leapers with Harriette Cole. We are talking with Tom Junod. The book is called In the Days of My Youth, I Was Told What It Means to Be a Man. I want to talk about when I heard you talk and when we were at the creativity conference, you talked about a lot of things that you have worked on. And in the reviews about this book, many people have reflected something that you said yourself, that before you talked about your family, in many of the pieces that you did, you really probed, looking for what's underneath of the skin of the people that you've interviewed. That there was the investigative journalism that kind of has gone into a lot of your work, perhaps came from this search for truth in your own life. One of the stories that you wrote that you said really changed your life was about Fred Rogers.
Yeah.
And the beloved Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. What was it about, how you did the research and what you discovered about him and being in his company that was important for you as a man?
Well, so it was really an amazing experience to meet and be drawn into Fred's circle, because he was sort of the opposite of my dad. He was a sort of a different kind of father figure. And yet he had some of the things that my dad had, which was that he had this amazing kind of charisma, and he had this amazing seductive charm, actually. And so he gave me a different way to be a man. And when I walked the street of New York City with Fred, I mean, I saw the kind of charisma that my dad wished he had.
Wow.
I mean, Fred, my dad said he couldn't walk down Fifth Avenue without being propositioned. Fred couldn't walk down Fifth Avenue without all manner of human souls approaching him. And, men, women, children, old people, black, white, every kind of person would walk up to Fred Rogers and try to talk to him. And he would sit there and cup his ear, and people would talk to them and tell him their secrets. And it was just the most remarkable thing, because like I said, he couldn't be more different from my dad. And yet, through his own sort of charisma, he had what my dad could never have had. He had the regard of all different kinds of people without bragging about it. It was just a natural thing that he possessed. And to be there and to watch that, it was a lesson to me.
How old were you when you interviewed him?
I was just about to turn 40.
Which is a pivotal time.
Sure.
That's sort of, it's a coming into yourself that happens at 40.
Sure.
That certainly you have enough time of reflection.
Sure.
And also looking forward. So you got more lessons about how to be a man from Fred Rogers. What are these lessons, and all these people you interview as well? Because you've interviewed a lot of very prominent men and others, but very prominent men over your career, looking deeply into their lives. What are some of the lessons that you feel you have learned? Let's start with from other people, not your father. What are some of these lessons that you've learned from men?
Well, my dad set up a certain kind of example based on charisma, looks, and power.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I had to realize, and that Fred helped me realize was that there was a part of me that was actually like, didn't need that. There was a part of me that was actually a decent guy. That was, a sort of a kind-hearted soul that really tries to do his best for people. And I struggled with that because my dad had very, very particular opinions about weakness and strength. And a lot of the guys that he grew up with, that I grew up with, people, the older guys that he called friends, he would also call weak, and even the nicest guys. And I think that it was Fred Rogers more than anyone else who taught me that kindness, decency, and all of those things are not examples of weakness, that in fact they're examples of strength if you can find it. And I think that Fred sort of challenged me to find that part of myself because he saw that in me.
That's beautiful.
And he said, not in these words exactly, but by his example, he said, go find that, go be that. And I've tried to be that.
And, there obviously, even if you didn't want it to be true, it is true that there are things about you that are like your dad.
Sure.
Plenty of them that are good things. But I'll say I remember when you walked into that backyard at the church. It's a beautiful sunny day. And here you stroll in looking as dapper as probably your dad was. I mean, you certainly are a man of style. And look, you've worked at the preeminent style publications.
I dressed up for the thing at the church.
You did well.
Yeah.
But it reminded my father was a style guy, like he had he and my mother had a black tie closet. He had his suits made. It was that era. And
sure was.
For certain people. And that the precision in detail in how you present yourself, certainly, I mean, your father taught you that. And you describe in the book how, however, you didn't have a shirt that required cufflinks, and your dad is like, how is that even possible? And you work in GQ. Like, what's going on?
I've remedied that situation. I have plenty of French cuff shirts, and I often wear my dad's cufflinks.
You had them on that day which is a really wonderful thing to carry on the legacy of your parents and with your father. Okay, here are all these things that were true about him, but there's no question how deeply you did love and do love him, and flaws and all. What do you say to people who are having this conflict? I'm sure as you've been traveling across the country, people must have come up with their own whispers and secrets and pain. Like, how do you get past the pain of the flawed behavior and come to a space of peace in your relationship with your father, even if you don't approve of the behavior?
Well, I mean, you're exactly right. The great reward of going out and talking about the book and going to bookstores and, going to events, doing all of these things is there's not a single one that I've done that is not followed by people coming up to me and saying, if you had changed your name, that could be my book. Every single event that I've had has entailed responding to someone whose dad was, if not the same, then similar. And it has been, I mean, I don't really have like advice for people exactly on how to deal with it, except with the way that I dealt with it. So when I was starting the book, I had a question of like, how do I present this man who in some ways was extremely destructive?
Mhm.
How do I present that man to the world? And there was, I mean, I had a whole long draft. I wrote 230,000 words
Wow.
and threw them away.
Ooh.
Why did I throw them away? Because for all of the accuracy of them, for all of the effort I put into them, for all of the power of the writing, I'm sure that they were okay. I'm sure, I mean, like I haven't looked at them, but I'm sure they were decent. They
Mhm.
weren't poorly written, but they didn't have like this dimension that the book needed to be true to my dad and also true to myself. And that dimension was the simplest and most powerful and the most difficult thing of all, and that's love.
Mm. And well, it comes through clearly.
Yeah,
The love comes through from the first page throughout the book, which makes it human.
yeah,
Again, a lot of
right,
people go through this, and the secret remains a secret for life.
yeah,
I also want to ask you, you decided to tell this story about your family. It's not just your father. You name all these people who
sure.
are in your family. Um, how did your family, those who were still living, react to you uh, exposing the depths of truth and
Yeah.
examples, reality and pain? How did they react to that?
Well, it's been difficult.
Mhm.
I think that ultimately they love me. They love pop-ups. They love Nana.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that, to see the degree to which my dad caused my mom pain and to have
Mhm.
that on paper, I think is difficult for them. I think it's been especially difficult for my brother Michael, with whom I've always been really, really close. And I think that has been hard to him, and I'm not going to lie about that.
Mhm.
But I think at the same time, also, like one of the biggest secrets that I tell in the book is something that involves my brother-in-law Ronnie, who was my sister Kathy's husband, and he had a secret that he kept for a long time, and about my dad that he finally tells in the book. And after that happened, he withdrew a little bit. He changed his mind about it being in the book. He changed his mind about sort of being part of that level of exposure. And we fought about it. I mean, we battled about it. I've known Ronnie since I was 4 years old. He
Wow.
started dating my sister when she was 14 and I was 4.
Mm.
So I mean, Ronnie and I,
Really?
Ronnie is family,
Yes.
and he's like a brother. So and he's hard headed, and I can be hard headed too. So we sort of went at it, but then finally it came to a moment where he was telling me about the secret and how much he didn't want it to come out. And I said, Ronnie, maybe it's time for you to tell it rather than having me tell it. Maybe it's time for you to tell it. And ultimately, he did. He shared it with his daughter and his son. And it changed a lot. Like that disclosure changed a lot about how they saw him, how he saw himself. And, when the book came out, when I sent him the book, I mean, he called me. I was in New York City in October, and he called me. And I was getting texts from him as he was reading it. And it was, in the texts were saying, holy blankety blankety blank. And that would be the entirety of the
Right,
text as
right,
he went on to, as he found that he wasn't the only one with secrets about my dad's secrets. And when he finally read the book, he called me in tears on a Saturday morning. and said thank you for writing it. So I think that there is difficulty, and then there's also reconciliation that come with secrets being finally talked about.
Mhm.
And I can just tell you from my own experience, and this I think is one of the things that we talked about at the church that day in Sag Harbor, is that when you finally tell the secrets that you've grown up with and that have been, mum's the word, they've sealed your lips your entire life.
Right.
You grow up wondering, well, what would happen if I told them? Well, I know what happens now. And I can tell you that it makes you stronger.
I love it. Let me pause for one moment. We just have a few minutes left, but I'm going to get in this message that this is Dream Leapers with Harriette Cole. We're talking with Tom Junod. His book, In the Days of My Youth, I Was Told What It Means to Be a Man. We just have a few minutes left, Tom, but I want to, I'm thinking about the people who might be tender around this topic.
Mhm.
This is our time of celebrating fathers, knowing, hey, fathers, we all are flawed. So that means fathers are
Mhm.
flawed too. For those who have fathers who have lived in the way that your dad did, and those who are living with it now, or who may be that person, what can you say? What do you have to say to them now?
I mean, the shortest and most direct and succinct thing I can say is you're not alone.
Mhm,
That's what I can say.
mhm.
Because, it is one of the things about having a unfaithful, I prefer to say that other than philandering, which is sort of a glorification at some sort of level. It sounds like something a king would do,
Mm,
when in fact it's more, it's kind of grubbier than that. It's kind
mm,
of nastier than that, I think. And so one of the things about having an unfaithful father is that it isolates you. You
yeah.
don't think that anybody else is like that. I never thought that my father, what I was going through with my father, my knowledge, which came early to me of my father, I didn't think that anybody else had that kind of experience or could have that kind of experience. It just seemed like I was completely isolated by it. And in fact, so many people have that experience. There's one thing that it will always be a part of my memory of doing this book, is that I met a woman last year. She was the aunt of one of my friends in Atlanta, and I had finished the book, and she asked me about it, about what my book was about, and she just looked at me and she goes, I had the same situation. My father had an entire second family. He had two children with his lover, his mistress, whatever that title, can be conferred on her. And she looked at me and she said, how many of us do you think are out there?
Wow.
And that us is such a powerful way of formulating that. I mean, I got chills just saying it just now. How many of us do you think are out there? And the book has given me an answer to that question, which is a lot. There's a lot of people out there. There's a lot of us out there. And I hope that the book has come to give them a voice a little bit.
Did you ever feel the compunction to be like your father?
Sure, of course. I mean, this question, I mean, my father, that was one of the things that he, basically tried to extend to me, which is
Right.
is the which is that the of
He
this
introduced you to the life.
yeah, the permission that he felt. I mean, I went on, um when I was a year, my first wedding anniversary, I went with my dad to Paris because, all my life he had been saying, "We're going to go to Paris, son. I'm going to take you to Paris." Well, so I went. It was my first wedding anniversary. I got married in 1984. My father and I went, just the two of us, to Paris a year later because it was his dream, and I really wanted to make it come true. But my dad was a soldier in World War II who became a singer in World War II. My dad was a big band singer in World War II. So his Paris was a Paris of his. I mean, it was kind of like the swinging 60s for my dad. My dad had all these girlfriends. And when we were in Paris, we went out to a club, and my father, on my first wedding anniversary, tried to get me to pick up a woman at this club. That's who he was. That's what he tried to teach me, and that's who he thought I should be. And I had to find a way to reject that.
Well, I'm sure your wife and your family appreciate that. Well, thank you so much, Tom. It was lovely to meet you, and to be able to read your book and be able to share it with my community is a real pleasure. And I appreciate your depth of honesty.
Well, I appreciate your depth of questions. You ask great questions, and this conversation has felt from the beginning true.
Oh, well, thank you. That's exactly as it should be. To be continued.
Thanks, Harriette.
Thank you.
I'll talk to you again soon.
I look forward to it. Take care.
Take care.
And thank you to all of you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I. The book, In the Days of My Youth, I Was Told What It Means to Be a Man. Happy Father's Day to all who are tuned in. Many blessings, and may you find peace and happiness. Until next time, have a great day and make it count.